Hello and welcome to the first ever live stream of the British Podcast Awards powered by DAX. We are here to announce the nominations for 2019. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with Anna Chazinski, Andrew Hunter-Murray, and James Harkin. We are the members of the podcast No Such Thing as a Fish. We usually gather around the microphones to discuss our favorite facts, but tonight we're going to be announcing the nominees for the British Podcast Awards 2019. How are you guys feeling about our chances?
Oh, I feel really optimistic, Dan.
Quietly confident.
Yeah, loudly confident.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Loudly
Yeah,
confident.
loudly, yeah.
It feels nice knowing that you don't have to do that thing of not winning a thing or getting nominated and pulling that face and doing that.
Oh,
So
that'd be awful.
awkward.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so today we have the honor of revealing the nominees of the British Podcast Awards powered by DAX. And just a quick reminder, before I've even reminded you for a first time, that you must stay tuned to the end of this live stream because there are two very exciting announcements that we're going to be making. One of which is we're going to reveal who the host of the Podcast Awards is going to be this year. Very cool. So, should we go for our first award?
Yes.
Okay, so we begin with one of the newest awards, and that is the Acast Moment of the Year. This is a category for podcasts that have broken out into their own audiences and become a national talking point. So who wants to read this?
Ooh, I feel like I'm a big talking point generally,
Yeah,
so shall I take this one? So the nominees for the Acast Moment of the Year are Dear Joan and Jericha, Hush Ho, a Pepperdine and ... co-production. Have You Heard George's Podcast? George the Poet. My Dad Wrote a Porno. Jamie, James, Alice and Rocky. Over the Bridge Podcast. Bilal, Kwaku, Patrick and Tom. Ways to Change the World with Krishnan Guru Murphy. Channel 4 News, ITN. You, Me and the Big C. BBC Radio 5 Live.
Did you miss one off the bottom? There's no...
I don't...
Guys, we can't expect to be nominated in the first category.
No,
Let's
come
just
on,
wait
that's
and see.
sorry.
That's not realistic, you know.
Oh, they sound great. Yeah, they sound really good. Interesting fact about the show so far. I just did the whole intro without my microphone on.
Great.
Very exciting.
That's
I hope
very
that-
exciting.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have been able to tell.
I think it would have just been.
I think anyone who's heard our podcast will not be surprised by that.
So congratulations to all in that first nominee. Next up are the nominees for the Best Arts and Culture podcast. Who's most cultured out of us to do
Andy,
that?
you're definitely.
Andy,
I'm very
should we go for
cultural.
you?
I went to the opera 4 years ago, so yeah. Right, the nominees for Best Arts and Culture are Blank with Jim Daly and Giles Paley Phillips, Excuse the Mess, Ben Corrigan, Folk on Foot, Matthew Bannister, Have You Heard George's Podcast, George the Poet, How to Fail with Elizabeth Day, and Stance Podcast, Hetafel and Crystal Genesis.
Is that two for George the Poet now?
That's two.
He's looking good.
That's twice as many as we've got. No, hang on.
No, we're not doing a maths podcast.
Okay, so let's move on to our next one, and it's the nominee for the Best Branded Podcast. So this is for podcasts that seamlessly weave their sponsor's message into their brilliant...
Dan, that's got to be me.
Yeah.
That's got to be me.
yeah. Wait, no, hang on. We need to seamlessly do an ad for DAX.
DAX, yes. Who are DAX? Is that the German stock exchange?
DAX, yes. Yes, it is.
Or is it the town in France, DAX?
It could be the town in France. It's all of these things. They've got all the DAXs together to sponsor this.
Is it the character from Star Trek Deep Space Nine?
Is it the first half of Dachshund?
It is, yeah, as I said, they've all got together, so these are all correct answers.
Is it an acronym for dads and xylophones?
Which is Anna's new podcast.
Yes.
Wow. Interviewing dads who play the xylophones.
Yeah.
Exciting. You should get George the Poet on. You might get some nominations out of it. So DAX is an end-to-end solution for hosting, distribution, ad insertion, and monetization of your podcast. They have a large, dedicated, experienced team who love podcasts and enjoy looking after the podcasts that the publishers. So they have over 650 podcasters. So they all trust DAX to help them monetize their content, including all of their back catalog, which we know is where all the money is. I made that up. I have no idea. I felt so empowered by Dax's words. I just joined in on that.
Dan found a diamond in our back catalogue the other week. Stop going on about it.
They work with large and small podcasters to find them big names or small. I don't know why I said it that way. And perfectly suited advertising partners. So that's DAX. They're a part of Global, the media entertainment group, which includes brands such as Heart, Capital, and LBC. DAX provides the opportunity to amplify your... I've actually been asked if I would do their actual advert, so this is my audition. Apologies, everyone else having to listen to me go through it. DAX provides the opportunity to amplify your podcast to a wider audience.
Yeah, you'd be more amplified if you had your microphone on.
Nice.
It's a very good joke. That's the kind of joke that's probably going to get us a comedy nomination, I imagine. So we do have the nominees for the best branded podcast. Very exciting. Who wants to go for that,
I'll do
James?
that.
Okay.
Let's do that. Okay, so the nominees for best branded podcast are Awake at Night, Chalk and Blade for the UNHCR, Feminists Don't Wear Pink, Penguin Random House, Scarlett Curtis, Fresh Eyes, Radio Wolfgang, Healthy for Men, The River Group on behalf of Holland and Barrett, Meet Me at the Museum, Art Fund, Rough Guide to Everywhere, Elena Chance for Reduced Listening.
Very exciting. Okay, congratulations everyone nominated there. So next up is the nominees for Best Comedy. Sorry everyone who's going to have to go up against
They
us.
even bothered to put any other nominees on there.
There'll just be one name.
Embarrassing,
So
yeah.
this one is sponsored by Spotify. Very exciting. Okay, so let's see who the judges have picked. Who wants to go for it?
Go on then. No, the nominees for Best Comedy Podcast are Beef and Dairy Network Podcast, Benjamin Partridge for Maximum Fun, Birthday Girls House Party, BBC Sounds, Dear Joan and Jericha, Hush Ho, Pepperdine and ... co-production. The all-new Angelos and Barry Podcast, Alex Lowe and Dan Skinner for Great Big Owl, The Guilty Feminist, Deborah Francis White, and the Horn Section Podcast by Deezer Originals. And
that's it.
let's just
And
move swiftly
congratulations
on, and
to
well
all.
done
That's
to all of those podcasts. I'm sure they're all hilarious.
Yeah, no, congratulations everyone. We're so happy.
Are we in another category?
Tears of joy.
There's what we'd better be. There's a lot of sheets of paper here. Well, yeah, so good job, everyone. That's very exciting. All amazing podcasts. It says here that we should mention at this point that we're on tour.
Yeah, we're not.
We're not. But we will be. We're going to Europe.
We are.
We're getting out of the British Podcast Awards. We're going to the European ones.
Well, we
where,
appreciate comedy.
Okay, we have a new category now to go to. Next up is Best Current Affairs Podcast, which are not funny in the slightest, probably. That's a
could be
slam.
us.
I didn't. God, if we're in this one. Okay, who should read this one? James, why don't you go for
I'll do
it?
this one as well. Okay, the nominees for Best Current Affairs are Beyond Today, BBC Radio 4. Have You Heard George's Podcast, George the Poet. Stance Podcast, Heta Fell and Crystal Genesis. The Grenfell Tower Inquiry with Eddie Mair, BBC Sounds. The Intelligence, The Economist for Economist Radio. And Today in Focus, The Guardian.
I should have said this when you announced it, but Beyond Today should just be called Tomorrow, shouldn't it?
Yes. Or the day after.
Or the day after.
I
or
don't think we're in a
future.
position to just rename people's podcasts.
We'll just have a thing, BBC. Just put it on the slate.
That's a good point. Okay, why don't we move on to our next category, and that is the nominees for Best Family Podcast. Shall I do this one since I have a kid? I have a kid.
I've got a mum. What's your point?
I've got a mum.
All right, you've got a mum and a kid. You've won. I appreciate that. Carry on,
The
please.
nominees for Best Family Podcast are Everything Under the Sun by Molly Oldfield, Fun Kids Science Weekly, Fun Kids Radio, Made by Mamas, Create Productions, Ruthie, Me and My Dad, That's Talk Radio and Wireless Studios, Surrogacy, A Family Frontier, Dustin Lance Black, Tracy Williams, and Jane Andrews for BBC Radio 5 Live, and The Long Road to Baby, Sophie Celeria.
Wow, and don't forget, Dax, Dads and Xylophones, Anna Zazinski,
Yes.
forthcoming, not eligible sadly this year.
No, but next year, Best Family Podcast, bear it in mind.
Wow, big claims. Okay, now it's time for, this will be good for you, Best Fiction nominations. Not to be confused with Current Affairs, am I right? It actually says that, and I said it. Who wants to do this?
Fiction.
Best
Yeah.
Fiction, okay, there we go.
Thank you very much. Okay, the fiction nominees, Best Fiction nominees are Calais 2037, New Time Productions Limited, Double Bubble, Prison Radio Association, Have You Heard George's Podcast, George the Poet, The Amelia Project, Philip Thorne and Oystein Brege for Imploding Fictions, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, Julian Simpson, Sweet Talk Productions for BBC Radio 4, and The Offensive, Radio Stakhanov. Congratulations all those guys, they sound great.
Yeah, very exciting. Just a quick word that you probably notice that there are a lot of nominations that have not yet come up. Why are they not at the top? We're doing this in alphabetical order. So if you're a true crime podcast, for example, just wait till T.
If you're a xylophone podcast, it's going to be even later.
Wow.
But if you're like an animals podcast, then probably just turn the computer off and go home.
Unless it's zebras.
Unless it's zebras, specifically
That's true.
zebras, stick around.
Okay, so now it's time for Best New Podcast. Very exciting. These are for shows that have only begun in 2018.
I think we're in with a shout here, I have to say. I think our show really re-began in 2018, you know.
That's true,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, why don't you read out the nominations
again?
then?
Yeah, all right.
Oh, well, no, okay, let's go.
Well, fine. Oh, yeah, fine. God, I can't even get nominated to read out some nominations. Tough gig.
All right, pipe down. The nominees for Best New Podcast are A Mile in My Shoes by Empathy Museum, About Race with Rennie Edo-Lodge and Renee Richardson. Have You Heard George's Podcast? George the Poet. No Country for Young Women, Season 1, BBC Sounds. On the Road, Prison Radio Association. And Today in Focus, The Guardian.
Exciting.
Great podcasts in there.
Yeah, there are. Okay, congratulations everyone in that. Let's go to our next category. And next up is Best Interview. Andy, if you could pass that to James.
Yeah, it's fine. That says, next up is Best Interview.
Yep, so then, well read. Excellent audition for host.
Okay, so the nominees in Best Interview are Breaking Mum and Dad, the podcast, Anna Williamson, Creates Productions, Declassified, Michael Coates, Homo Sapiens, Will Young and Christopher Sweeney for Banana Stand, How to Fail with Elizabeth Day, Sex Talk, Prison Radio Association, and The Modern Man, Ollie Man for Rethink Audio.
Very cool.
Great stuff.
Okay, so next we have Best Radio Podcast. This is supported by Radio Player, and these are all shows that started out on radio but have come into their own as a podcast.
I've got a very good feeling about this.
Why don't you do this one, Dan?
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. The nominees for, Andy, please. The nominees for Best Radio Podcast, supported by Radio Player, are Brexit, A Love Story. That's World at One for BBC Radio 4. Fun Kids Science Weekly by Fun Kids Radio. Multi-Story, BBC Local Radio. Shout Out Radio.
Like Echo Productions.
Tara and George. That's Audrey Gillen for Falling Tree Productions. And The Chris Moyle Show on Radio X Global. Okay. Should we move on to our next category, guys?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Okay. The next batch of nominees goes under the heading Sex and Relationships.
We have every chance in this category.
I think so.
Absolutely
As
do.
long as it's, you know, hamster sex or weird giant genitals. Or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giant genitals.
I'm sorry,
Too much information there,
my
Andy.
new podcast, Weird Giant Genitals.
I'd listen to that. Okay, so this is a new category, by the way, another exciting new category. And once again, Andy, if you could hand that to James.
No, I'm seizing it. Okay, so the nominees for Best Sex and Relationships podcast are #QueerAF, National Student Pride and Jamie Wareham. Project Pleasure, Anushka Tate and Frankie Wells. Q-Munity, Alexis Court, Kevin Morosky and Christiana McPherson. The Receipts Podcast, Audrey Akande, Milena Sanchez and Talani Shonai. The Sugar Baby Confessionals, Sarah Mae Tucson for Fable Gazers. And Unexpected Fluids, BBC Sounds.
Ooh, BBC sounds unexpected. Okay.
Yeah,
It's just about precipitation, guys.
there'll be some unexpected fluids over the home counties tonight. Good.
All right, so the next category that we're going to go to now is the Best Sport Podcast. Yeah, so Anna, you love sports?
Sure, yeah. The best sport is Tiddlywinks. Game over. No, the nominees for Best Sport Podcast are F1 Beyond the Grid, Formula One for Audio Boom, LS11 or LS11. One of those two. LS11, Darren Harper and Ryan Wilson for Proper Sport. The BBC's LGBT Sport Podcast, Jack Murley for BBC Radio Jersey. The Big Interview with Graham Hunter, Backpage Media. the cycling podcast Feminine, the cycling podcast. The Totally Football Show with James Richardson, Muddy Knees Media for the Totally Football Network.
Very exciting. Okay, so now we have 2 new awards as well to bring up. Designed to champion shows that are reaching new audiences. So the first is called the Bullseye Award, and this is supported by what should sound like it's pronounced as Podiant, but it's Podiant.
That is an amazing fact if I ever heard one.
I mean, no one can see it written down.
So it's got the word pod in it, but you don't say it in that way. It's just worth anyone, if they see that word written down like me and think it's poddy. Yeah, so anyway, for shows reaching niche audiences is what this Bullseye Award is about, and high quality content. So let's go for the Bullseye Award, and James, why don't you give a read of that?
Sure. Okay, the nominees for the Bullseye Award, supported by Podiant. Podiant.
Yeah.
It's got the word pod in it. Amazing.
Podiatrist.
Probably True, Scott Flashheart. Ask the Nincompoops, Andy Stanton and Carrie Quinlan, Great Big Owl. Centuries of Sound, James Errington. Somerset House Studios by Somerset House Studios. Farmerama by Joe Barrett, Katie Revel and Abby Rose. And BBC Somerset's cricket show, Extras BBC Somerset.
Wow. Great Big Owl sounds like a possible competitor to Weird Giant
Genitals. I was thinking that and I'm worried. Yeah.
That's a possible new category for next year. Giant things. Okay, well, so on the other end of the spectrum, the next award is called the Spotlight Award. And this celebrates the shows that judges thought bring large new audiences to the podcasting world in the last year. So, Anna, would you read the Spotlight Awards, please?
Sure. So the nominees for the Spotlight Award are Fortunately, with Fee and Jane, BBC Radio 4. George Ezra and Friends, George Ezra. Happy Mum, Happy Baby, Giovanna Fletcher for Pix You. Happy Place, Fern Cotton. Katie Piper's Extraordinary People, Katie Piper for Something Else. That's Something Else without a G on the end. It's pretty
We didn't think you were being cool.
gangster. And finally, That Peter Crouch Podcast, 5 Live for BBC Sounds.
Very exciting.
Congratulations, guys.
Yep, okay, so
How many
now...
have we got left, by the way? Because I just noticed that there's...
Oh, yeah, we've taken her off the ball, haven't we? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think they're probably saving us for the climactic moment.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another
We're
moment
very-
in Weird Giant Genitals,
Yeah,
actually.
or the sex and relationships category.
Yeah.
It's not in DAX, Diamond Xylophones.
Okay, yeah, so congratulations to everyone in that last category. Now, before we're about to move on to our next category, the Best True Crime. Just a quick reminder to say, do not leave the live stream at the end of the nominations because we have 2 big announcements to make, one of which is the new host, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so you ready now for Best True Crime? I think, Andy, you're probably...
Yes.
Is there?
I love crimes. So, the nominees for Best True Crime are as follows. They are Case Notes, Classic FM for Global, Dead Man Talking, Peter Sale and Alex Hannaford for DMT Media and Audio Boom Originals, Death in Ice Valley, Neil McCarthy and Marit Higraf for BBC World Service, NRK, End of Days, Kieran Tracy for the BBC, Red-Handed, Hannah Maguire and Suruthi Bala for Acast, and The Doorstep Murder, Fiona Walker for BBC Scotland.
Nice.
Very good.
A lot of
Okay.
crime, a lot of crime.
Let's press on now to the nominees for Best Entertainment Podcast.
Here we go.
This is it. This
Here's
is
our shoe going in. It's a shoe in.
supported by Sony Music's 4th Floor Creative. So this
Thank you
is
to everyone at Sony in advance. Very
And
flattered.
Dax
We're humbled.
as well.
And Dax.
Yeah.
Andex.
Thank you.
Okay, James, I feel like you should be reading this.
Bring it on home, James.
The nominees for Best Entertainment Podcast are Blood on the Tracks, BBC Sounds, Desert Island Dicks by the Desert Island Dicks podcast, Off Menu with Ed Gamble and James Acaster, Plosive Productions, Private Parts, Jamie Lang and Francis Boole for Spirit Media, Spark True Stories, L. Scott, and This Paranormal Life by Rory Powers and Kit Greer.
And that's the right card, is it?
Appears to be they're definitely all podcasts.
Does it go over
They're
onto
all
the next
entertaining
one?
as well.
It doesn't, no.
Okay.
I'll tell you, the European Podcast Awards are going to be so...
They're going to be
We're
great.
going to be really great.
Yeah.
We're not really about entertaining, actually, in our podcast.
I couldn't
so
agree more.
I
No.
think there's probably a more fitting category.
Is there a joyless fact category? I think there we might...
Monotonous and predictable, maybe? Let's wait and see.
Worst microphone quality.
Okay, so we're almost there. It is time for the final category.
Ooh.
We're at the final category. This is our big chance. And it is for Smartest Podcast.
There we go.
Okay, nominees here are making the best factual shows in the country according to our judges. So let's have this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You seem
okay.
like the right person to be talking about smart podcasts.
Yes.
Ew.
I can see a lot of names in here, and I'll just say them. About Race with Rennie Edo-Lodge. That's Rennie Edo-Lodge and Renee Richardson. Have You Heard George's Podcast? George the Poet. On the Road, Prison Radio Association. She Done It. Lovely title. Caroline Crampton. The Tip-Off. Maeve McClenachan for ACAST. Sorry, Maeve. And The Urbanist, Monocle 24.
Well, congratulations all those guys.
Right. It does feel like this George the Poet character could have given up one of his spots for us, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, how many's he got now?
he's on like 12.
12, 13? It's kind of obscene.
I don't think that's how it works. I don't think football teams do that either.
What, book 12?
Look, I hadn't thought through the analogy, and that's why we weren't nominated for Best Sports
Yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah, or Best Smart Podcast, apparently. Okay, so that is it. That is the nominations for 2019. The British Podcast Awards, powered by DAX, will take place on Saturday, the 18th of May at King's Place in London. It's a fantastic evening, so anyone watching it, you must go along. And it's a great venue, very easy to get to transport-wise, and a lovely walk by a canal.
Not at 3 in the morning, though.
Not
Try
at
to
3 in the
avoid that.
morning. So, here is the first of the big announcements. Hosting the night this year will be the very talented and wonderful and funny from Ostentatious,
No way.
Carrie Adloyd. Carrie Adloyd.
Wow.
Well,
She's the best one.
She
She's pretty
is the
good.
best one. Oh, well,
Joe Marpurgos.
and there's Rachel, you know.
Daniel Roberts, Amy
Yeah.
Cook Hodgson,
Yeah,
Charlotte
Graham.
Dickens, Graham Dixon.
It's
Yeah.
a
Person who
great
plays
team.
the
Oliver Izod.
Yeah.
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 The person who collected my ticket, the last Ostentatious I went to, was very good, very efficient.
Nameless theatre assistant.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's Carrie Adloyd. That's
Yeah,
going to be
that's
amazing.
brilliant.
She's a huge winner of the British Podcast Awards. Griefcast is an incredible podcast. And you'll know her from her acting work and her live stuff with Ostentatious, as well as her TV appearances. Very, very cool. So, yeah, that's the first of those announcements. Also, don't forget that all the nominees are in contention for the Podcast of the Year award. And that's supported by Audio Boom. So that's very exciting. That's another one for George to sweep up. And here's the second big announcement. Our popular vote, the Listener's Choice Awards, supported by BBC Sounds, is now open. Oh, I saw someone do the open it sign off stage. It was, open it. So if you are a British podcast, you are...
Hey, we're a British podcast.
We are a British podcast. You are probably eligible to enter.
We're probably eligible to enter.
I think the probably is put in for us to say. Everyone else is. We're probably.
They'll find some loophole to exclude us. I can feel it already.
Yeah, so listeners can vote for free. You just have to go to BritishPodcastAwards.com/vote. And the votes are open until the 15th of May. So go there and say enter a name of a podcast, put in no such thing as a fish, for example.
But if nothing else appears in your head, and even if something else does appear in your head, just put no such thing as a fish in.
Bat
Yeah.
that other thing away.
Yeah.
Bat it away.
Do that, and then we won't feel so painfully horrible as we do right now.
Guys, we've always got our Oscar, okay? We've always got our Oscar. Oh, it's a bit wobbly, isn't it?
Anna.
Oh, God.
Nobody tell her.
We should add, terms and conditions do apply. Full details at BritishPodcastAwards.com/vote. If you slow down the video, you'll be able to hear what I just said.
It's live, Dan.
Okay, and also stay tuned to @BritPodAwards on Twitter and Instagram, and you'll get updates from the competition, during the competition, and after the competition, and just, until next year. It's a good place to just get updates. Okay, that's it. Thank you everyone for watching. Best of luck to all the nominees. It's so cool to have been able to do this and announce you all as possible winners this year. Everyone is a winner. It's such a cool thing to be a part of.
Well, not everyone.
No, literally none of us are winners sitting here right now.
I think we should make clear at this point, we're not really incredibly bitter. We were too disorganised to submit applications
I
to
had
be
the envelope.
winners.
I meant to post the envelope. It turned out you shouldn't even apply by post. It was my mistake.
Yeah.
We're not assuming we would have been on any of those lists, but
No.
we're not blaming the committee for excluding us.
The best way to assume you're not going to be nominated is by not nominating yourself.
I meant to post the letter, guys. I am sorry.
It'll be a 3-person podcast from next week.
Anyway, so there is the Listener Choice Awards. Do put in your favourite British podcast in there and give them a chance of winning. And that's it from us. We have been No Such Thing as a Fish. And if you want to hear our podcast, don't. Apparently not any good. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. And again, congratulations to all the nominees. And have a great night on the night. See you later.
See ya.